Hello and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to another potluck wrap up where I put all of the titles that I have read in the last month in this teapot, pull them out at random, so I have no idea what I'm going to be wrapping up during this 20-minute section, because I do time it to 20 minutes so I don't waffle on. I'm air quoting last month because you may not have noticed, but you probably have noticed, I've not posted a potluck wrap up since November. I have not wrapped up anything since November. There are a lot of titles. There are a lot of titles. And not because I've read a lot. I read like a decent amount over November, December and January, but not super loads. I just haven't cleared loads in ages. And I am really tempted to do just like a big potluck clear out, because there are books in there from like March 2023, which we're really testing the boundaries of my brain when we're seeing if I can remember a book from a year ago. So without further ado, I'm going to do the classic. This is like my favourite bit, is where I pull the lid off and it makes a really satisfying ting sound. I really hope. I need it. After not wrapping up for ages, I need it. I think that was perfect. I think that was the perfect little ting. Oh my god, that was so good. Right, okay. So let's give him a good old shuffle. So for January, I had a decent reading month, but nowhere near as strong as January of last year. I only read in total 7 books. I've read a couple more so far in Feb, but again, not loads. But then I guess without the pressure of doing TBR vets or trying to hit 200 books or doing like a TBR challenge with Olivia, I'm just not forcing myself to read as much. But then equally, I'm now at a point where the only books on my TBR are books I want to read. So swings and roundabouts. Swings and roundabouts. So the first book I'm going to wrap up for you is from December, which is a relief, and that is Jenny Fagan's Hex. This is part of the Darkland Tales. I first picked up Rizzio by Denise Mina and loved it. This is a kind of witchy literary historical fiction about a witch from the present going back in time to save a witch from the past. It's really sad, it's really poignant, and I don't really have much else to say about it because anything else would be spoiling it. But what I will say is I really liked the writing style. I didn't love it as much as Denise Mina's, and I'm really intrigued because I have seen recently, I think it's not Jo Nesbo, it's someone who does crime dramas, has added another one, which is Lady Macbeth. Val McDermott, that's it. Val McDermott has just released another one for the Darkland Tales about Lady Macbeth, which I'm also really intrigued by. I don't think this had the same tenacity that Rizzio did. This one was far more lyrical and gentle. I mean, it's dealing with a far more gentle topic, and it is very kind of beautifully sapphic, but beyond kind of just standard relationship portrayal. It, like I said, it's poignant, it's beautiful. I didn't love it, but there is so much great to say about this. I just can't say it without spoiling it. But I know that a lot of people who really enjoy proper witchy, proper historical books will really enjoy this. So feel free to pick this one up. Short and sweet. Short and sweet, that one. But then we love that because then it means I can wrap up more. I think the most I've ever wrapped up is 11, I think. I don't know if I'll meet 11 today, but we'll try. Next is Stone Blind, which was from January. I need to stop picking them from the bottom because clearly that's where all the new ones are. So, Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes. Now, I have adored Natalie Haynes' books since I first picked up Pandora's Jar, which I think I read them in a really weird order because I read Pandora's Jar, then 1,000 Ships, then something else. There was something in the middle. Then The Children of Jocasta. Maybe it was Children of Jocasta. It might have been Children of Jocasta in the middle, then Stone Blind, and then I have Divine Might on my TBR somewhere. So this was the most recent Natalie Haynes. Now, it's really interesting because a friend of mine went to go and see Natalie Haynes for their read and their book tour and talk on Divine Might. She's really shy and her partner kind of compensates for that for her, and he's a really nice guy. But apparently when he met Natalie Haynes, Haynes was not particularly receptive to talking to him, and he wasn't sure if it was just because of the dynamic between him and his partner or if it's because Natalie Haynes hates men. But he said he very much got the impression that Natalie Haynes hates men, and I think that's really interesting. It doesn't put me off her books because I feel like a lot of the Greek scholars that I've come across have been interesting, to say the least, and I think it's quite a male-centric genre, so having more opinionated feminists in it is not a bad thing. And you can see it in this writing. I don't know if knowing that made it more prominent for me, but I could see it in this writing. The way the women are portrayed, even the messy, even the dangerous, even the nasty women, are portrayed with a level of care and complexity that the men just aren't. The men are either naive, stupid, or thuggish. They don't really cover any other bases than that, and even in those categories they don't layer that, whereas the women are far more complex. Every woman in this gets some kind of redemption arc, even when the men don't. And I loved it, but I do wonder if that's why so many people were conflicted about this when it first came out. Because I think sometimes, even if we can see the misandry, whether it's a big issue for us or not, it can present itself in a way that is quite difficult to digest, in the same way that misogyny does. Obviously not to such a great extent. Misandry is not as common a facet of our daily society, but it is still a form of oppression created by a patriarchy. Developing a means for us to be oppressed as women then forces us into hating men because they're not supporting us in the way that we feel we should be supported, which we should, etc. So it's really, really interesting that even outside, there was no way I was going into this in a vacuum. And I think sometimes it's really important to remember when you're reading a book, you are not reading it in a vacuum. And usually you're reading it with your life experiences and perceptions of stuff based on things you've read by the author or the genre, and it doesn't necessarily need to be more complicated than that. But I'm just saying, moving into this one, I loved the book, but things I have to say about it are shadowed by experiences my friends had and then informed me about, and that kind of political sphere around it was really, really interesting. But I do wonder if you would have the same opinion having heard that story from a third party as opposed to directly from the source. So obviously this follows the tale of Medusa, but I do think it's really, really interesting that Medusa, whilst being one of the main characters, is technically only one of like 6. Much like 1,000 Ships, this is from a lot of different perspectives. And what I really, really liked is the development of Medusa versus Gorgiana, or Gorgania? Something like that. There's a Gorgon, and I'm not going to spoil anything about the dynamic of those two, but I think it's really, really interesting the way it's portrayed. I really loved the empathy and sympathy that the audience is kind of induced to feel for Medusa, because it is such a modern adaptation of that. I really, really love any modern adaptation that really leans into the predatory male nature of the gods rather than Medusa being the seductress or the villain. I really, really like that even Athena to a certain extent gets a redemption arc, and why that is, I thought that was really fascinating, especially because she's such a spiteful bitch in mythology. Wise but spiteful, which is interesting. And it's something that I would like to look more into, because I think it's really interesting that Athena is the wisest because she is the goddess of wisdom, and yet she always seems to side with men. And I wonder if that's, again, like a Greek myths have been in such a male sphere, that's kind of all that's left residue, or if it's something less complicated than that, and it's just that the narratives around her make her seem like a bitch. I don't know, but it's really, really interesting to me, because I do wonder if I would have read this differently had I not known that story about meeting Natalie Haynes, and I also wonder if it would be different if I weren't such an opinionated feminist. I do wonder if that in itself has shadowed how I view this book. Would I recommend it? Absolutely. Absolutely. Even if it is just your first intro to Natalie Haynes, I think you'll get a grip with her writing style very, very quickly. She does like multi-perspectives. She does like colloquial language, even though it's a Greek myth, and she does know her stuff. There is comedy in the kind of like smaller moments. I really like the dynamic between the Gorgon sisters. The family dynamics in all of this are really stunning. And yeah, would just recommend. It's a great book. Really great book. Okay, next. Oh, there's another comment. So, Children of Jocasta. I did say that I had read a couple of Natalie Haynes recently. Children of Jocasta. I thought I read one before this. I feel like there must be one that I'm forgetting, because it's Pandora's Jar, 1,000 Ships, and then I feel like there was something else, but I can't remember what it was. And I know it wasn't the Furies one, so it may have been this, but I may also be confusing a different Greek retelling that I was reading in between. Who knows? I love a Greek retelling. So again, I have much to say about this as I did about Stoneblind. I will say that the misandry in this was lessened, probably because I hadn't heard that story yet. But as an Oedipus retelling, I thought this was really interesting. Again, multi-perspectives. Again, we have empathy, we have sympathy for the characters. It's great female gaze. I really love that it returns the autonomy to Jocasta. She was a queen. I really, really like the dynamic of the children. I like that there is a split dynamic, or split timeline of Jocasta and her children years later, and why that's the case. I really liked the kind of political intrigue and the throne stealing and the drama and the plague, and I just felt like this was a really well-rounded Greek epic. And I feel like, again, Natalie Haynes knows her stuff and she knows how to entertain with a Greek retelling. It's inherently feminist, it's inherently empathetic, and it's a 5-star. That's all I have to say about it. So I'm kind of glad I did this one first, because it meant I could do this one super, super quickly. Love them both. Is this another? It's another new one. I'm not gonna get to any of those from March. We're not getting to any of those from March. So from November, I read Yellow Jessamine, because at November I started to panic that it was getting towards the end of the year and I needed shorter reads. I didn't love this. I know that Caitlin Starling has done some really great thrillers and gothics, and this one had a lot of really great gothic tropes. But I'm starting to find that spooky short stories don't do it for me. I am currently reading a collection of spooky short stories, and I don't care about those ones either. And I just wonder if it's a case of, because it's a short story, the pacing doesn't work for me. It's not that it's wrong, it doesn't work for me. I feel like I want a slower burn, I want more intrigue. The fact that this all takes place over a couple of weeks or a couple of days or whatever seems really fast, and it all seems to be happening to her in this moment, and the way the plot twists are revealed were really jarring, and it just fell a bit flat for me. It had all the makings for a great gothic short story, and I just didn't care about it. So that was kind of disappointing. I don't think Ali will be particularly surprised by this wrap-up of this, because I think Ali has warned me about Caitlin Starling's writing for me before, in the fact that Ali loves Caitlin Starling, but I think Ali has warned me that I won't. But I thought I'd try it anyway. I think I already had this before I actually got that warning. But yeah, there were loads of opportunities for it to be developed further, and because it's a short story, it didn't go anywhere. And it just fell a bit flat for me. So that was disappointing. But it is what it is. It is what it is. To be fair, I've just seen that it's recommended by S.T. Gibson, and I didn't like Adaro Flood either, so. Okay, this is an older one. Oh, I've got two. Okay, we'll do this one first, because this is definitely an older one. And we have, from March, Lost in the Moment and Found. And actually, this is kind of perfect, because I also recently read Mislaid in Parts Half Known, which are the next books in the Maguire series. I don't know what my finger was doing there, that was weird. I really enjoyed Lost in a Moment and Found. I didn't enjoy as much, I did still enjoy it, Mislaid in Parts Half Known. I do feel though, at this point, I can't work out if Sean Maguire is trying to wrap up every kid's individual story, or if it's working towards a greater arc. I might need to reread them, because I feel like the greater arc is missing for me, and I don't care enough about each individual character. I care about certain characters, but none of it seems to have the whimsy and magic and intrigue of the first book, or the mystery and gothic nature of the second. And those two are my favourite. And it's really, really hard when you're committed to a series, but your favourite book is the first one. Because I feel like that, and the other issue, is when you love a book or love a series, but it doesn't get good until book 3. I'm kind of struggling a little bit with these, and they're quite expensive too. So knowing that I've got to spend between £16-17 to order the hardback from Amazon, because otherwise it's £20 in Waterstones or whatever it is, and I can't even get it through my own distributor, is really frustrating and really expensive. So do I want to commit to this series, or do I just unhaul the whole lot? I don't know. And it is sad when you read 2 books from a series that make you question that, knowing that there's only a couple more left, as far as I'm aware. I think there's a couple more to come, but I might need to reread them all to see if there is that over arc that I'm missing. That umbrella arc of the narrative that I'm missing. I really hope that is the case. I'm not convinced that it is. And then the other one that I accidentally pulled out was Dark and Shallow Lies, which I don't know when I read this. I just know that I read this ages ago. I actually got an arc for this from NetGalley and really, really enjoyed it. This is set in the Louisiana Bayou, and everyone has some kind of psychic ability except the main character, who has these like weird dreams, but her abilities are not as strong as others. And essentially she went home early the summer before and her friend died, and no one is telling her anything, no one seems to know anything, and they all seem to be hiding something, which in a town full of psychics is not easy to do. So I liked that level of intrigue. I liked the kind of Louisiana vibe of it. It has a very relaxed southern vibe to the writing style. I really liked the fact that there is this constant threat of crocodiles that live nearby. The plot twist twisted, but I will say that it was one of those ones where I kind of guessed right at the beginning who the murderer was and what actually happened. And then there was like 1,000 different plot twists where it made it almost impossible for that to be the case. And then it was that. So it was a little disappointing that it wasn't one where I felt like I was working it out along with the audience. It was more just a case of, oh, and here it is kind of thing. But I know that there is actually quite a few thriller readers who actually quite like that, who like having the rug pulled from under their feet. If that's the case, I would recommend this. Ginny Meyer Saint has quite a few books out now, and there's a new one that's coming out soon, I think. And I'm definitely interested in giving more of her books a go. I just didn't love it. It was probably like a 3.5 to 4 stars. I liked it enough to get a copy in, although technically this is Waypoint's copy. I'm just using it for video reference. But I did really enjoy it, and I would recommend it. Again, I feel like it's kind of similar to this one, where there were gothic elements to it, which intrigued me. They just weren't enough. It wasn't developed enough. It wasn't pushed enough, and that was an issue for me, because I like it dark, I like it twisted, I like it pushed to the limit. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm going to try and push for 2, but I may only have time for 1 more. I've got another new one. This is another one. Oh, what a relief though. Okay, so I'm not going to have time for 2 because I'm going to run over with this one, and I don't even care. So I have been obsessed with this book since I read it in December, and I have recommended it to everybody that I've had a chance to speak to, and now I'm recommending it to you as well. This is an arc that I managed to get second hand, and it came out, Clytemnestra came out in March of last year. It is now out in paperback, and you need to get it. If you order no other books from this list but this one, this is the one. So, Clytemnestra, to be fair, lots of Greek vibes here. Clytemnestra is the wife of Agamemnon. Agamemnon is the one who sends the 1,000 ships over to Troy to retrieve Helen, who was married to his brother. And basically, Helen and Clytemnestra were sisters, and it kind of follows the children and like siblings of Clytemnestra and her children and everything else around it from a very angry, vengeful, feminist female gaze, and I just adored it. It was both slow burn intrigue of what the fuck is she gonna do next, and vicious murder. She is a warrior queen. Like, it was so good, and I feel like Clytemnestra, much like Jocasta, are people who get kind of forgotten in Greek myths as wives, as mothers, and kind of left to just those roles, regardless of the fact that they were queens and warriors and frankly badasses. And for those of you who don't know the original myth, Clytemnestra loses her daughter to the War of Troy. Basically, Agamemnon goes to set sail and there's no wind. They can't go anywhere. So he sacrifices his daughter, who is beloved by her people, but obviously by her mother as well. And he has done awful things to Clytemnestra. I mean, that happens like here. Like, you're a fair way in when that actually happens. By this point, he has done awful things to Clytemnestra anyway, and that is the breaking point for her. She decides that he has to die. He is a monster. She's always known he's a monster, but she has done whatever she can to survive, and now he's killing her children. So she kills him, and she has to be very tactical about it and very clever about it, because he is bigger than her, he is stronger than her, and it's very clever. The way this plays out is so clever. I really, really enjoyed it. There's been obviously discourse recently about whether people need to read the things that they're retelling, and I get the vibe that like, it's interesting because obviously Constanza Kanzi did study history or classics or something at university as well as creative writing, and you can tell, much like with Natalie Haynes, that she just adores her subject, and I adored this book. I adored it. It was 5 stars. It made me laugh, it made me cry, it made me clutch at things, panicking, right? It was tense. But like I said, it was slow burn, it was high action, it was everything. It was everything. And I am obsessed with it. So it will not come as a surprise to you that because this was one of the last reads of the year, this was one of my favourite reads of 2023. 10 out of 10, would recommend. Okay, it's not a particularly long list this time. Not a particularly long wrap up. It is what it is. But very Greek myth heavy. I guess that was what I was in the mood for over the last few months. Let me know in the comments down below what was your favourite read over the last month or so, or if you've heard of any of these. Are you more likely to pick them up now that you know what my thoughts on them are? If you just want to leave a little bow and arrow to say that you were here, that's also great. Make sure to like and subscribe. Treat yourself to something from Waypoint because it supports me and my content. Check out the links down below because there's a Patreon down there now. And most importantly, have a nice day.